Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate this character poster for the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I recently ran across this poster and I thought it would be a good opportunity to show you how you can recreate this old Xerox effect inside of Photoshop, and also how you can use a layer as a mask with blending option. Now, if you want to follow along, I have included all the assets that I use in a link in the description of this video. It also includes 3 gradient presets for this specific project. So go ahead and download those, and then let's dive into Photoshop. All right, let's go to New File, and we're going to create a document here that's 1080 pixels wide by 1350 pixels tall. The resolution is going to be 72, RGB color, 8-bit is fine, and my color profile is sRGB. Let's go ahead and hit create. Next, I want to create some guides so that as we're working on this, if you want to follow along, you can place objects in the same place. So here I'm going to go to View, Guides, New Guide Layout, and you'll probably see something like this. I'm going to change this to 2 columns with no gutter. And then for the rows, we're going to do 7 rows and no gutter. And then for the margin, I'm going to do a top margin of 134. And then 0 left margin, 50 bottom margin, and 0 right margin. Let's hit OK. All right, I don't need the guides right now, so I'm just going to use Command semicolon to turn those off. Okay, next, let's bring in our paper edge. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and within our Assets folder, there is a file from Texture Labs. I'm going to go ahead and place that. And here, I'm going to do Command T for transform, rotate this, and then scale it up so that the black edge is really just kind of along the edge here. After I've made it wide, I'm going to have to either unlock this or just hold down Shift and then start pulling these sides. And do something about like this, maybe a little more on the top. Oops. So something about like that. Let's hit the check mark there. All right, and then I need to turn this into a mask. So the simple way to do that is go to your channels and just hold down Command and click on the RGB channel. That'll select out all your white. Then I can go down here into my taskbar and click on this, which will invert my selection. All right, next I'm going to go to my foreground color and set this to E4, E0, D1, and that's just kind of a paper color there. And then go down here and go to solid color. And now it's used that color and it's created this edge. So I no longer need the Texture Labs layer. I can go ahead and throw that away. And the other thing I want to do here is let's just go ahead and add a background color layer. And for this, I want it to be 50% gray. So I'm just going to 0, 0, and 50. And if we just zoom in, you can kind of see we have a little bit of this paper mask left over. I don't really want that. So I'm going to go to my mask here. And with my mask selected, I'm going to do Command M, or Image Adjustments Curves. And here, this is just applying to the mask. So I'm going to take my black point and just bring that down until I don't have those spots anymore. And then hit OK. I'm going to do Command 0 to fit my view. And I'm going to go ahead and change my layer name here to Paper Edge. And then this layer to background. Next, I'm going to put in the main type on here, which is keep calm and carry on. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my guides with Command semicolon, and then just type right in the middle here, and then type all caps, keep calm and carry on. Okay, and then for this, I'm going to go and with my type tool selected, I'm going to open up my character palette. I'm going to change the main font here to Alpha Slab 1 Regular. This is a Google font if you don't have it already. I'm going to change the font size to 105. I'm going to change the leading here to 229, and then the tracking to 720. And although I constantly recommend against this, just in this case, I am actually going to condense my fonts by 90%, just to better match up to the original there. All right, and then back on my move tool, I'm going to go ahead and center this up to our center there, and then also just push it up so it's on this guide and that guide, and that looks really good. And now I can go ahead and turn my guides back off with Command semicolon. And what I want to do now is create my subject smart object container. So to do that, I'm just going to add a layer here. We can call this subject. And I want to do Shift Option Command and E, and that's going to merge everything into this layer. I'm going to convert this to a smart object, and then double click it to open it. Now the other thing I want to do here is I actually want the keep calm and carry on to be inside this layer as well. So if I just drag this out, I can take this layer, hold down Shift so that it lands in the same place, and now I have it as a layer in here, and that's just going to help me position my subject according to the type. So next, let's go to File, Open, and here we're going to grab our first subject, and that's going to be this Mohammed file. So let's go ahead and open that. All right, and I need to cut him out of the background. If I just go to my auto selection tool here, on my top menu I have Select Subject. I want to take this down to Cloud. That gives better results, and then hit Select Subject. And this is going to process, and there you go. We now have our subject selected. I'm going to do Command C for copy. Go ahead and close this file, and then under my lettering do Command V for paste, and then I can go to Command T for transform. Start making him a bit smaller, and kind of want him right about there. Be a little bit bigger. So right about there, and because I have my type here, I can make sure his eyes don't go behind the E's there. But these are just reference, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the top layer and the bottom layer. I just want him cut out on a transparent background, and then I'm going to go ahead and close and save that file. Okay, so we now have him in here. I'm going to go ahead and put him behind both the text and the paper edge. And now we're going to create our Xerox effect. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and take these two layers, the keep calm and the paper edge. I'm going to put those in a group, and we're just going to call this top elements. Okay, so now with our subject smart object selected, I'm going to first go to Image, Adjustments, Shadows and Highlights, and just minimize the amount of contrast here by putting these shadows up to 100, highlights down to 0, and hitting OK. And next, I'm going to go ahead and turn off this top elements just so we can see our subject a little better here. Next, I'm going to get rid of the small detail by going to Filter, Noise, and Median. Just going to do 1 pixel's worth and hit OK. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a curves layer. So Image, Adjustments, Curves. And This will allow me to modulate the effect later on. Now for this, I'm just going to leave it just no curve on it and hit OK. And then finally, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and add a black and white. Okay, so we now have him basically ready to add the Xerox effect to. And the Xerox effect we're going to be doing with a noise layer. So let's go ahead and add a new layer. I'm going to call this noise. And I want to fill this with a neutral gray. So I already have, for this I'm going to do 0, 0, and 50. That'll give me a neutral gray. And then if I hold Option and Delete or Alt Backspace on a PC, that'll fill that layer with gray. Now, the kind of noise that you use will affect the effect that you're creating, meaning the final effect. So I did test a few of these. I tested using noise here. Also, if you go to Filter Gallery and go down to Sketch Reticulation, this gives you a very interesting noise. However, for this, I actually found that the best one was using the Camera Raw filter. Now, before I apply it here, I want to turn this noise layer into a smart object. So let's go ahead and right mouse click, convert to smart object. And the reason for this is we're going to be making a few copies of this. And if we want to go back and change our noise pattern, it'll go ahead and change it across all of them. So here, I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw filter, and we're going to be using this grain here. So let's set this to 85 and 75. And the reason I'm using this is because we have the roughness here. So if I put this to like 400, you're going to see what this roughness does. By turning it down, you get a really cool pattern. So I'm going to set this down to 15. And then hit OK. Okay, so now we're going to create our Xerox effect. And the way we're going to do that is by turning this into a threshold. So to do that, we can use the hard mix. And what the hard mix does is it uses this layer basically to push all the layers either to white or to black. So you can see there's no grays here. And that is creating this old Xerox effect. Now, it's a little too strong, and the beauty of hard mix is that by adjusting the fill, not opacity, we can modulate how strong this threshold is. So if we go to our fill and start taking it down, you can see that's adding some elements of gray there. And we're going to take this down to about 55. So we still have a pretty strong effect. And if you want, we could actually push this maybe even to 60 if we want a stronger effect. But there you have it. We now have that nice Xerox effect. And the last thing we're going to do is add some color on top of it. So we're going to use a gradient map for that. And a gradient map will map certain colors to our blacks and then certain colors to our lights. And we're going to pick our dark color here, which is going to be 2F4143. And then our lights color, which will do our background color, is going to be 9D99A1. And now if we go here, we're going to go gradient map, and let's go ahead and click on the gradient editor. We're going to add one more spot in the middle here. So we want the location to be at 50. And then for this color, it's going to be a stronger purple color, 473180. Okay, so we now have our basic effect in place. The other thing we want to do here is we want to change our background color. Now, because I want this to be set up as a character poster template where I can drop other characters in, it's important that I only have to change this layer. So how do we do that? How do we change our background color? Your first instinct might be to hold down Command and basically use this as a mask for a new layer, right? If we invert our mask here, if I go here, invert my mask, well, now I have a different background color. I could change this to whatever I want. The problem with this method is if I go ahead and change my subject here to a different one, it's not going to update this mask. So I'm going to show you a cool trick, which is using a layer as a mask. So first, let's go ahead and take all these elements here and go Command G. We're going to put this in a group called primary artwork. Then I'm going to add a new group right on top of this, and we're going to call this background color. And for this, I'm going to use a kind of a blue color. So let's go in here and we're going to select 297796. So this is the background color we're going to use. I'm going to go down here and go to solid color. And now that's created this blue background inside this background color folder. We're going to go ahead and call this blue. Actually, let's call it purple, just because this gradient map is our purple gradient map, which I'm also going to rename to purple. And just to keep this smart object file as organized as possible, I'm also going to right mouse click and change this to indigo here and indigo here. Okay, next I want to add some noise on top of this. So let's take our noise layer here, hold down Option to make a copy, and drag that right on top of there. I'm going to change the fill on this to 20. And actually I can make it all the way down to 10. And I'm going to change the blend mode here from hard mix to linear light. And you can see that's just adding a little bit of that gradient texture on top of our blue background. And then I'm also going to add a second noise layer on top of this. So I'm going to do Command J again to copy our noise. And I'm going to throw away the smart filters on this and then go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. We're going to set this to 25, hit OK, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. I'm going to Gaussian blur this by just 1 pixel. And then this will also be set to linear light and also with a 10 fill. So now we've just created this noisier background, and now what I want to do is mask it so that our purple character here in the background shows up. So this is where we're going to use knockout feature in blending. So I'm going to take my subject, do Command J to copy that layer. I'm going to drag him up to the top of our background color layer. We're going to call this knockout mask. And for this, I don't need any of these smart filters, so I'm going to go ahead and throw all those away. And then I'm going to take the fill of this layer and put it to 0. And then next, I'm going to double click over here on the layer to bring up my blending options. And we're going to be using this knockout. Now what knockout does is on deep, it knocks out to my background. But on shallow, it just knocks out this group. So as you can see here, this is knocking out to the primary artwork below it. And the beauty of this is when I change this smart object, it actually updates the mask so that we have our blue background. I'll show you that in a second here. Okay, so last few things we want to do, I'll go ahead and turn this on, is add our texture on top of everything, and then also add our movie title. So in our top element, let's go ahead and add the movie title first. So I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, And in our assets, we've got the title PNG. Go ahead and place that. Do Command T for transform. Make this 17. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn my guides back on with Command semicolon and line this up down here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the guides back off. And now I want to apply this same kind of light cream color. So I can just do that with a color overlay here. It's already set correctly, E4E0D1. And then I want to add my texture on top of everything. So I'm going to grab my camera raw filter texture, Command J to make a copy of that, put it at the very top of my layer stack, and change the, so it should be on linear light, and I'm going to change the fill here to, let's try 20. Yeah, that looks good. So now you can see we have texture on top of our paper, our lettering, and it's also making the texture on our background a little stronger, a little better integrated with our character here. So there you have it. We now have our smart object file totally set up. I'm going to do one more thing just to make this even easier, and that's to take my subject here. I'm going to do Command J one more time, and I'm going to drag this to the very top of our layer stack and take all the smart filters, throw those out, and then reduce the fill to 0, and I'm going to call this Replace Me. And then we can collapse all these, and now let's take a look at our smart object in play. So I'm going to double click and then go to File, Open, grab one of these other files here. For this, I'm going to grab the Lance Reese file. I'm going to go to my smart selection, go to Cloud, and select Subject. And then do Command C, close this, Command V. I'm going to do turn on these letters so I can see where it's all going to land. And then do Command T for transform. Go ahead and make this smaller. I want to make sure she's not behind, her face is not behind those letters. So probably something there, maybe a little smaller. Something like that I think is nice. I'm going to go ahead and turn all the other layers off and then close this and save. And right away you can see she has now been placed and the mask has been updated, so we get this blue color. Now for her, I might go here, and this is where our curve layer is going to come in. Just make this a little bit brighter. Okay, so that is all the basics of setting up this effect and also setting up the smart object. But while we're here, let's go ahead and set up the character posters for the other two colors, which is green and red. So to do that, I need gradient maps for green and red, and then I also need background colors for green and red. So for my gradients, let's go ahead and add another gradient map here. And if we go into our gradient editor, you can go to import, and in the assets you'll see these Xerox gradients. Let's go ahead and load those and then scroll all the way to the bottom, and here they are. I'm going to add the green one, and let's call this green, and also change this label to seafoam. And then I'm going to go ahead and select here, and for green we're going to use 227F75, and I'm going to go here and add another solid gradient, and we'll call this one green. Go ahead and change this to seafoam. And now if I turn off our blue, our purple, you can see we now have this in our green color palette, and then the last one will be our red color palette. So let's go here, add another gradient map, And if we scroll down to these ones that we imported, you'll see the red one. Let's call this red. And let's go ahead and change this to red as well, just to keep our file nice and organized. And then here, I'm going to change this to 942F25. And let's add a solid color. And I'm going to right mouse click, set this to red as well. And here you can see our red color. I can go ahead and turn that off. And now if we go back to replace me, let's go to File, Open, and grab one more here. It's going to be this Thomas Tucker file. And I'm going to go ahead and select Subject again. We'll do Command C, Command V. I'm going to turn on my reference layers and then shrink him way down. And for him, I think I'm going to have his kind of eyes popping up here. So maybe something like this. And then we can turn those layers off and save. And then for him, I don't think I need this curve. So let's go back into our curve and turn that back down a little bit. There you go. And there you have it. Now we have a template file where we can do any of these colors. All we have to do is turn on the color palette that we want. And you can even mix these up. Because this is acting as our knockout mask, we can put a different background color here if we want and kind of mix up the looks of these. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that effect in Photoshop, and also how you can create a smart object file or template that makes it easy to recreate more of the same. Now, hopefully through this, you learned some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use in your own projects. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, leave a comment, turn on your notifications, share this video, do all that good stuff. And if you're interested in professional Photoshop training, check out Nucly.com. I saw both professional training for Photoshop as well as professional assets that are entirely royalty free that you can use in your personal or commercial projects. So check that out, Nucly.com. Otherwise, here are some other tutorials that you can check out, and I will see you next time.